Is gaming gonna die because of AI? Yes. Is gaming gonna die because of AI? No. Gaming as we've known it over the past roughly half a century or so is likely to disappear, is likely to keep existing in smaller, more concentrated niche communities. And I don't mean it's gonna change. It's been a developing techno-social phenomenon since it started. What's going on now is much more akin to a paradigm shift than to your more normal development. However, this survival is down in some part to people like you and me. Let's break it down. Starting with the social portion of this phenomenon. For Gen Z and Alpha, gaming has been rebranded. It's no longer a hobby you enjoy, it's a service you rent. They've been captured by games as a service. And this could be its own series of videos analyzing how the convergence of increasingly more capable mobile hardware, coupled with the simplicity and general availability of digital distribution and the inevitable path of capital towards the highest profit for the lowest amount of expense, have led to this. But that's not something that deeply interests me. What interests me is how this capture comes at a great and silent cost: agency. When you don't own the client and you don't own the server, when what you pay money for is a monthly license to use the two, the agency gamers used to have evaporates. I need to take a bit of a tangent here and make it clear that there is a difference between agency and choice. Choice is the act of deciding and selecting among certain alternatives, and it's situational. We're talking about choosing video games, not hairstyles. Agency is the sense of ownership or control over one's actions and their outcomes. It is, or should be, ever present and broad, applying throughout space and time. Choice is going to a restaurant and ordering something off the menu. Agency is deciding whether you go to a restaurant to begin with, ask for something off the menu, or indeed make your own damn restaurant.
With blackjack and hookers!
The two tend to get conflated because oftentimes having a sense of agency is associated with having alternatives to choose from. However, their relationship is neither linear nor proportional. You don't necessarily feel more agency if you have more choices. In fact, there is such a thing as having too much choice, as anyone with hundreds of untouched games in their GOG and Steam libraries can attest to. Choice also tends to be very clearly situated in time. It's an act in a moment from which paths diverge. Agency exists from the past into the ever-ephemeral present and into the always uncertain future. Agency is a phenomenon we carry with us, not a single point of decision. Tangent over. Meaning that even if a gamer has a choice between several games as a service providers, the gamer has no other power or option beyond that. Because their access to the gameplay experience depends on a server they don't and can't control. They can't play it offline, they likely can't play it on a different platform, and odds are they can't really use the hardware terminal they do own to do wildly different things either, because these tend to be self-enclosed ecosystems as well. I'm talking about consoles. Now this capture would be bad enough, but that's only one part of the problem. Another component is the general decrease of computer literacy amongst the younger gens. And by general computer literacy, I don't mean being able to save something as a PDF. I'm talking about general understanding of file structures, BIOS settings, the need for codecs and drivers and such. And to be fair here, this isn't necessarily a fault that's theirs. I don't want this to come off as old human yelling at cloud computing. Nothing of the sort. This is simply the world that they were born into. And unfortunately, they are by far the squishiest of targets. Following several decades when computing was mostly limited to industrial and business applications, once it reached a point of both mass and popular appeal, things started becoming more and more simplified and streamlined, so that an increasing number of people could partake in the wonders of having two instances of Outlook running at the same time, neither working while you're on your way to the moon. This is a process of both simplification and specialization that always tends to happen with any new consumer level technological phenomenon. Personal computers went first into the domains of admin and business to later expand into gaming. Consoles were a simplified and specialized offshoot of computing technology, focusing exclusively on video games and later expanding into being entertainment media centers. As such, the push to reducing the friction between user and software has always been a driver for and the result of the development of computing overall. And there's a separate video there on how friction can be a great catalyst for self-betterment, but that's for a different occasion. All of this was to be expected, at least in the broadest of terms. Certainly nobody could have predicted the exact shape of things to come, but the push towards cloud computing and storage has been pretty clearly telegraphed for about 10 years or so. What wasn't expected, however, is the current hardware squeeze we've been experiencing as of me making this video in the summer of 2026. I normally try not to date my videos in the hope of making them evergreens, but this upcoming section deals with current day events because of how paradigm shifting they currently are, and they seem to be for at least the short to mid future, meaning 3 to 5 years, optimistically speaking. The entry cost for what we would normally consider a traditional gaming enthusiast has become prohibitive. What would be considered a comfort purchase, that mid-ranged rig that would allow you to play basically any game you want on medium detail, or let's say the latest Nintendo handheld, or the up-and-coming Steam thingamajig, those have now become luxury items. Personal anecdote time. My desktop rig has been giving me blue screens of death for the past calendar year. They haven't disturbed my normal activities yet, but a memory test revealed that most likely my RAM is the culprit. Looking up what my exact 2 DIMMs of DDR4 RAM would cost me now if I were to replace them kinda made me wanna make this video, because they would cost me a whopping 4 times as much as they did when I bought them initially back in 2024, and that's because of AI. I know it took a while for me to actually get here, but do like the video and consider subscribing if you're still watching, because we're getting into good stuff right now. All the good stuff in my essays is in the second half. The costs of any piece of memory as well as storage has quadrupled in some cases because of the absolute insanity that is the corpo-led AI push. And this in itself is a subject that is much too large and multifaceted for me to address, nor is it in my channel mission to do so. However, it is something that is affecting not only the present and future, but I also think it's retrocausal somewhat, meaning it's affecting the past in some ways. But this might also be a silver lining, potentially. I'm saving that for the end of the video. Besides my personal anecdote, we've recently seen both delays and increases in prices of previously announced gaming hardware. And what is being envisioned by those who design and build the CPUs and GPUs is, well, this.
Connected to your whole house, connected to your laptop, connected to your display, all the cameras, your dryer, your water cooler, your water heater, your everything, whatever you want, your security system, all connected to this, and this becomes your personal AI, your personal AI agent.
No the fuck we don't, Jensen. The future is pretty well telegraphed, at least from this Western perspective. There's a massive potential dark horse in this race, however, and that is China. But that's more of a mid to distant future thing, 5 to 10 years or more. For the time being, this is what's coming.
Microsoft and NVIDIA are going to reinvent the PC.
A Windows platform for agents.
This is the N1X. Microsoft and NVIDIA meticulously optimized everything so that this computer literally runs everything the world has ever created, plus it now runs agents.
Computing hardware designed for dogshit AI agents to circle jerk with other rat-fucking AI agents. Meaning that, again, the agency we had as gamers and computer users overall starts evaporating once we don't have the control over our input and outcomes. Since according to these corporate rat fuckers, everything will be mediated through their AI slop agents.
I could totally imagine that someday there's actually an AI supercomputer in your house. And it's running all of your agents, it's running all of your assistants. And they're doing all kinds of things for you all the time.
Now, the hardware squeeze would be bad enough, but it keeps getting worse. We've been through other periods of high prices due to various unforeseen reasons. For a couple of years, they tend to recalibrate, and I do expect the same to happen in this case, though I foresee it to be much more abrupt and damaging to the overall global economy. But again, that's not my domain. There are specialists out there talking about these things in way clearer terms than I could. What is further killing gaming into the future is vibe coding, a phenomenon solely reliant upon LLMs existing. Yet again, this is a type of phenomenon that appears when certain technologies make what used to be a specialist exclusive domain more approachable by the masses. In itself, it's not a bad thing. However, the fact that everyone can take photographs with their phones doesn't mean we're all photographers, but it makes us feel like we are. Same with LLMs and vibe coding. You have absolutely no clue what's going on, but as long as the thing does what you wanted it to do, you're a coder now. Only not really. Not at all, actually. But hey, if this is your entry point into learning how to EOD code, namely looking things up on GitHub, then that's fine. We all have to start somewhere. However, I doubt that's gonna be the journey for most current and future vibe coders. This sounds grim, and it is. However, I did say there's a potential silver lining here, considering the obstacles that I've listed. The increased cost of hardware, the decreased amount of agency we'll have using said hardware, as well as the likely degradation of coding capabilities globally speaking. I expect a pivot to happen in the gaming public and especially indie devs. The pivot won't be towards something new, but towards something old. As I said earlier, this conflux of events and phenomena seems to be so paradigm shifting that it's messing with the already established past. It's making hardware from the past way more valuable than it would have been otherwise. Clearly from a financial standpoint, but also from the perspective of actually increasing our sense of agency. That old desktop, laptop, tablet, or whatever that's in a storage box somewhere in your attic, basement, or what have you, has become not simply a representation of nostalgia or a time capsule of when you were using it. It now has the potential of gaining an entirely new life as a totem of your increased agency in a world that is actively trying to strip it away from you. A retro rig can run completely offline, running whatever version of Windows you want or Linux or whatever. And depending on its age, you can likely run pretty much most of the games you would want to run anyway, as long as they weren't released after 2015 or so. So this is something I do expect to see more of. More people getting into scrounging for older PCs. And despite what this comment said on my video about the computer I found in the Danish woodshed, even the most non-special piece of hardware will become way more valuable than it is currently perceived to be, because that is a piece of hardware you own and you can install in whatever other piece of hardware you also own, and then can customize and hack it and do whatever you want to do because you will have the agency to do it. Now, will you have the skill and knowledge to? Maybe you already do, but probably not, at least not at the start. But that's what my channel and others much larger and way more technical are for. You can learn how to do those things. Now, onto the pivot I would see happening in the indie realm. And again, this is me just speculating. I'm not a prophet, I'm just a chronicler of the past. What I see is an opportunity for indies to start making games for hardware people already have. And I mean proper full games, not ports, hacks, demakes, and whatnot. Which, don't get me wrong, those are really awesome, and the fans and fan communities who engage in that sort of decentralized free labor are to be commended, because they are active participants in what I call guerrilla preservation, but that's a subject for the future. Back to right now, there's several really capable handheld platforms out there that people have been using, modding, and jailbreaking. The Steam Deck comes to mind, the first Nintendo Switch are likely the most visible and powerful. However, I think indie developers could actually start making video games for even older platforms, such as the Nintendo DS's or even the PSP. Hell, there's been a few developers releasing new games for old consoles for years. One of the most recent announcements, as of me writing this video, being Mighty Cuphead Adventure for the Master System, a console from 1985, literally before I was born. And I do think this could be the sign of future projects to come. When I talk about the death of gaming, I mean it as a metaphorical death. Video games and gaming will continue without a doubt. However, the obstacles and threats I listed will change its mainstream and popular form to resemble nothing like it was. But since when do I worry myself with what's mainstream or popular? That's never been where I live. Instead of cursing that darkness, I much rather light a match, which in turn can light a fire whose embers can be carried away long beyond the warmth of that initial spark. And that's what I intend to continue to do for as long as I can. And all of you watching and commenting and subscribing are not only helping me on that mission, but actively participating in spreading the knowledge. You are those embers. Thank you for glowing.